This is your Tuesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Got a lot of Wild content coming up in just a little bit. Nick Bonino, Wild center, will join me. He's going to play in his 100th career playoff game Tuesday night against Vegas. Quite a run, quite a journey for Nick Bonino. Won a couple Stanley Cups with Pittsburgh. Brings a ton of playoff experience to the Wild and was a important player for them in their Game 1 victory on Sunday. Also be joined by Sarah McLellan. She'll help me set up the entire Game 2 Tuesday night against Vegas after, again, that big 1-0 overtime win on Sunday. What should we be looking for in Game 2 based on what we saw in that game? Both of those people, Sarah McLellan and Nick Bonino, will help set that up. But first, what did I miss? We got to do this. We got to do this something different today because we can't keep grinding on the Twins. We can't keep saying, can't keep breaking each of these games down in a way that gives them individual meaning. They lost 16-4 to the White Sox on Monday night. 16-4. The biggest controversy at the end being should the White Sox batter, Yermin Mercedes, should he have swung 3-0 at a pitch that was less than 50 miles an hour from Williams Astudillo, where she crushed over the center field fence for a home run to make it 16-4, 2 outs in the ninth, 3-0 pitch. I don't know. I don't really care, to be honest. I don't know if that's playing the game the right way, quote unquote, or not. I don't think pitching a utility guy is necessarily playing the game the right way. I think if you're going to throw a really slow pitch like that, it deserves to get hit. Maybe don't become a joke at this point in the season. That's probably what I would say about that, but that's not what I want to talk about by and large today. I think there's an interesting moment that kind of encapsulates the Twins season. TC Bear tweeting, "Please send help, please." How did the Twins become? How did we get here? Was a question I was just asking myself as I watched that game last night. So I'm going through, the old box scores, just kind of looking how did this season get to this point? Because you get to 13-26, you've lost 2 out of every 3. You've lost the season series of the season so far, 2 out of 3. That's a pace to lose 108 games. Forget about a pace to win 100 games. That's a pace to lose 108 games. So how did we get here? I keep asking myself that. So I'm going through it. And I'm like, okay. Remember, at one point they were 5-2 this year. Even after blowing the opener this season, they were 5-2. They lose 1-2 to Seattle. They lose to Seattle. They're 5-3. Then they lose the next night. They're up 6-0. They lose that game 8-6. 6-5 in the ninth. Colomé gives up a 3-run homer. So you're 5-4 at that point. Next day's games are postponed. The Dante Wright police shooting, the Derek Chauvin trial is going on at that moment. Those games are postponed, rightfully so. Absolutely was the right thing to do. But that's a moment in this city. I think, if you're living in the city, if you are a citizen of the Twin Cities, if you're in that moment, that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing to see what your community is going through. So add that layer to what the team is already going through, which is, some tough losses. Biggest loss, I didn't even mention at the start of the season, Mike Bell, your bench coach, dies of cancer, just days before the season start. Incredibly sad. And impactful to your baseball team, both from an emotional standpoint and a practical standpoint, because he was Rocco Baldelli's right-hand man in the dugout helping make some important decisions. 5-4, you've got the delayed, the postponed game. You come back the next day, you lose. The next day you play a doubleheader against Boston. You lose both those games. Same day, Andrelton Simmons goes on the injured list for COVID. So now you're thinking, okay, is our season going to get shut down? Is our season going to get delayed? Am I going to get COVID? Maybe that's a question you're asking yourself if you're a Twins player. They'd gotten a lot of them had gotten a vaccine not too long before that, but probably not fully inoculated at that point. Those that had gotten shot. So you maybe you're worried at the very least about the season getting postponed. They go out west. I think they managed to win one against Boston somewhere in there, but they go out west. They lose to the Angels. They were actually up 3-2 in that game, but they lose 10-3. Another bullpen meltdown. Then the season gets paused for 3 games because enough guys get COVID. They're worried about contact tracing. Again, 100% the right thing to do, but another weird thing in the season. They come out of that, they get 0 runs in a doubleheader against Oakland. They get that awful 13-12 loss where they commit 2 unseemly errors in that game. They're 6-11. They come home. They're bad again. The bullpen keeps melting down. They're worried about this and that. They maybe have a little bit of a stretch in there where they get back to 11-16, but then it all falls apart again. And here we are, 13-26. The injuries, the tragedies, the things that are on people's minds, all of those are part of it. But the part of it too is just a team that maybe wasn't put together the right way and has underperformed in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of factors that have gotten this team to a moment that the Tortuga was pitching in a 15-4 game against a division rival on a Monday night, a beautiful Monday night in May when the season already feels lost. But here's the thing: we can't keep wondering what's wrong with this team. They're just bad. They're flat out bad. There's no more. We can look at the why. We can analyze. I've analyzed pitching and are they throwing too many sliders? I think that's all perfectly valid. But the final analysis is they're just a bad team. So if you are going to watch baseball, and specifically Twins baseball for the rest of the summer, you need to recalibrate. And maybe I managed to do this in a very strange way. Yesterday, driving, this is even before the 15-16-4 game, driving on my way back from picking up groceries. I'm by myself, very rare these days. None of my 3 kids are in the car with me. My wife's not with me. I just went to get groceries by myself, picked up all the things we needed. Driving home, listening to the radio and listening to the current, as it were, and just had been flipping dials. Found a song. I was like, I kind of like this. So it turns out it was a Noel Gallagher song, formerly of Oasis. Shout out to Ben Gessling. We have a long-standing thing on Access Vikings podcast where I insist that Blur was the better Britpop band of the 90s, and he insists it's Oasis. But anyway, I like this song. I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm gonna I texted Ben about it later, actually. And the next song comes on, Run the Jewels. Loved it. Hadn't heard it before. Loved it. Never would have, you don't usually hear those 2 songs back to back, but hey, love it. Third song comes on. Robert Palmer, Didn't Mean to Turn You On. Like, I hadn't heard that song in 15 years. Don't love that song, but you know what? In that moment, it was perfect because it was a surprise. I love surprises, and in this day and age, we don't get a lot of surprises, right? We kind of know everything. We know what to expect in a lot of cases. So those 3 songs in a row, that to me is how I'm going to watch the Twins the rest of the season. Just be happy for any pleasant surprises the rest of the way, but go in with 0 expectations. That's the only way you're going to get any enjoyment out of the rest of this season if you want to watch baseball the rest of the year.
I'm Nyla Jean Myers, Senior Assistant Sports Editor at the Star Tribune. Thank you for listening to Strip Sports Daily Delivery. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast and our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
Happy to be joined on Daily Delivery today by Nick Bonino. Wild forward. Nick, memory serves and research shows Tuesday night will be your 100th playoff game. I don't know if you remember your first, but what I want to know from you is if you remember that first playoff game, what do you learn between 1 and 100 as you're kind of on this, journey of understanding what the playoffs are all about?
Yeah, I do remember. That year I'd played, I think, 26 games in November and December, and then I was sent down and I didn't get called up until the playoffs. I played games 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think we played Nashville actually with Anaheim, and back then I wasn't, playing too much. I was more, an energy checking, just kind of getting a taste of the playoffs. And I think I've learned over the years just really how hard it is to win, how long the playoffs are, the toll it takes on your body, the mentally, physically. It's tough. So, it's pretty crazy to be playing my 100th game tomorrow.
What do you convey to teammates who maybe, have limited or even, none, Kirill Kaprizov going into Sunday's game and never played in an NHL playoff game, at least? What kind of information do you convey to them to try to adequately describe what what the jump is like.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, never an NHL playoff game, but I feel like when you're in the NHL, you've played in some big games, some big moments throughout your career. Whether it's for him, he's playoffs in Russia. For guys, it's World Juniors, it's junior playoffs, it's college playoffs, it's stuff like that. So I think everyone's had a taste of a big stage. Obviously, it doesn't get bigger than this, but I know my message mostly is just emotionally. Just I think that's where games are won and lost with your team. Just staying focused, whether it's, a first period like we had yesterday where we looked a little bit maybe with some plain legs and we got awesome goaltending and came into the locker room and just completely turned the page, came out and played two different periods, played two great periods and then won it in overtime. So I think in the playoffs a lot can happen, and whether it's shift to shift, period to period, game to game, and I think keeping your head as straight as you can and even keeled and going with the flow is very important.
Is that the most important ingredient? I mean, you won 2 cups with Pittsburgh. Is that the most important ingredient in a playoff run, or is there one, single ingredient that you can identify as that this is the thing that you need to have?
I think you have to control your emotions, and you need confidence. I think, the teams that win are the teams that execute confident plays, aren't just chipping it out and chasing it all game. Because you almost want to do that. You don't want to screw up. So, and that being said, everything's magnified in the playoffs. Mistakes are magnified. Face-offs, block shots, getting pucks in, everything's magnified. Everything's more important. They can cost you games. So, you make a mistake in game 7 of the regular season, it might not hurt you, but in the playoffs, everything can come back to bite you. So as a team, just staying focused, staying even keeled, and having each other's back.
When you win game 1 on the road, it gives you a real opportunity. Not that you're just satisfied with that, but how do you kind of seize on that momentum and say, we got a real chance. If we win this game, we put ourselves not only in a good position, but in command of a series versus, 1-1 is a satisfactory split going back to Minnesota.
Yeah, I think, just approaching the game as a whole new thing. I think the forgetting that we're up 1-0. We enjoyed the win in the locker room after the game. Obviously, we were pretty excited for the team, for Talbs, for Ecker. They both played awesome, and turning the page on that, coming up today, getting a little workout in, and then showing up tomorrow and acting like nothing happened.
Yeah, have you seen Eck more excited than that? I don't usually see much of emotion out of him.
I know, that was awesome. He, I think I beat Broads into the pile, and he was on the ice. I was so happy. So I think, you've seen him get the puck in that spot a bunch of times this year, and he always seems to score. So I feel like I had one leg over the boards when he got it on his backhand. I just felt like he was going to score. So really happy for him.
Last thing for you, got great goaltending, like you said, from Cam Talbot. The other guy on the other side, Marc-Andre Fleury, someone you're very familiar with from Pittsburgh. How do you keep trying to solve him and get more than one past him in this next game?
Yeah, he's annoying. So many good saves last night. When you play with him, he talks a lot on the ice, and anytime someone makes a block, he's cheering, he's going woo, he's happy. I loved it when I was playing for him. Now it's killing me. He's making some amazing saves. I saw a stat. He's played 15 consecutive playoffs. He's played games in. So it's pretty remarkable. One of the best goalies of all time. And it seemed like the goal we scored last night was how him or Talbot was going to be beat last game. Just a bad bounce, and that's what we needed. So hopefully we can solve them a bit more next game. But their goaltending over there is pretty good.
Nick Bonino, thanks so much. Good luck Tuesday night, and thanks for joining Daily Delivery today.
Thanks a lot.
Joined today on Daily Delivery by Sarah McLellan out in Vegas. Have a feeling you're going to be hearing a lot from her over the next, I don't know how many weeks. We'll see. Wild off to a really good start, though, in this best-of-7 opening round series against Vegas. They took game 1-0 on Sunday. Game two, Tuesday night in Vegas, a chance to go up 2-0. Sarah, your thoughts on kind of what it's going to take to, now that Vegas has got to have a little bit of desperation, and then what's it going to take to, not just perform the way they did in game one, but take it to another level and try to take this back to Minnesota with a 2-0 lead?
You know what? I don't know if the Wild would want to change much. I think that was probably a really solid blueprint of how to outlast the Golden Knights. You got perfect goaltending, pretty sturdy, clean defending, a strong PK. Obviously the power play, came up short on a couple tries. I guess the biggest issue or focus, I guess, would be the offense, but one goal to obviously win in game one, but it could have been a lot more. Obviously Marc-Andre Fleury was spectacular. He made, a number of saves in tight. Had one save where his hand was behind his back and he still managed to catch a piece of a shot from Kirill Kaprizov. So
just showing off at that point. Jeez.
You don't see that every day, but maybe next game he isn't that acrobatic.
Right.
And he doesn't get a piece of the puck. So, the quality of chances I think were there. It just, the execution wasn't. So if those attempts are still there in game two, maybe they go in and it's a different vibe or a different feel to the game. So, I think the one thing too, it's maybe going to be trying to get more in the inside, get that forecheck going earlier and more consistently. Obviously that was an issue in the first period when the Wild was hemmed in its own end. It just was icing the puck, struggled to win faceoffs, to just, get the puck to begin with and try to organize a rush. So I think those are kind of the building blocks to eventually getting inside the paint, getting inside, the Vegas defense in that line of sight of Fleury and, try to create rebounds, try to get on top of rebounds. That's how this team has scored in the regular season consistently against Vegas, particularly Fleury, by crashing the crease and kind of wreaking havoc that way. So I think probably a little bit more pressure on the inside, but they still were getting looks. It was a 1-0 game, but when you really break it down, it could have been, 3-4, goals for the Wild. And so you know what, as a road team, when you don't have that last change and you don't always get the matchups, I think, game one was obviously, probably a pretty solid template to build off of to try to, obviously sweep these two games and go back to Minnesota in a comfortable position.
Yeah, and they're playing, not to borrow a gambling Vegas term, playing a little bit with house money. When you win that first game, you can, not that they want to change things, but it probably allows them to think, hey, we could pressure them a little bit. We don't have to worry. We know we can defend. We know kind of how this game can go. Try to get a goal early, something like that. That could be the way to switch things up just a little bit in game two. Game one was very physical. Is that a sustainable thing over what could be a 6 or 7 game series? Is that just what they should be expecting for the rest of this?
I think so. I think that's the expectation. I don't think Vegas is going to ease up. If anything, they might get more physical. And I think the Wild is probably expecting that, probably got to be ready for that, and probably has to dish it back. Obviously the game one was a little bit of a different look, for the Wild against Vegas than, how the regular season series wrapped up. Ryan Reeves was back in the lineup. He missed a chunk of games to end the regular season due to injury. So he's back. He's obviously, their big rugged forward who finishes his checks, is just, an intimidating physical presence out there. And he had 10 hits in the game. So he fulfilled his job, his responsibility. Having said that, it's not like he cracked the game open. I don't think he necessarily affected the game one way or the other in terms of creating scoring chances for Vegas and making the Wild kind of fumble in its own end. But I think it's to be expected that it's going to stay that way. And I think, for the Wild too, playing that way, that's how this team plays well, when it's aggressive, when it's finishing its checks. And when it can be, engaged along the boards on the forecheck, I think that's something to look for in game two a little more, is just a little bit more cycle play down low, kind of creating havoc along the boards to get the puck to the front of the net. So I don't think it'll go away. I think that's still going to be the case. And, I think obviously Reeves sets that tone for Vegas, but Jordan Greenway, he had 11 hits In game one, Marcus Foligno had 10. So the Wild obviously also has the personnel to sustain that style.
So Kirill Kaprizov even threw his body around a little bit, which he will do. He's not a finesse, not a finesse player. He can, he's got skill, but not just finesse. But we didn't talk about him a whole lot coming right off of game one. We haven't talked about him yet here. Felt like he played a good game, though. Even though he didn't get on the score sheet, it didn't seem like the moment was too big for him. Not that should be a surprise based on his rookie season, but was that the sense you got and the sense in the locker room? Like, hey, this guy didn't score in his debut, didn't get an assist, but that was a solid debut, and maybe bodes well that they already won a game without getting any goal production from him, but that could come in future games here.
Yeah, he didn't look overwhelmed by the stage at all. And you're right. I think he has obviously multiple dimensions to his game. Like the first shift of his, NHL playoffs career, he lays out a big hit, actually a block shot. It was a block shot and he had a hit, I think, later in the first period. So, he's obviously, bought into being, what this team needs when it needs it. And whether it's a block shot or, a big hit, he's provided that. And he didn't look out of place doing that. He still had, arguably the best chance of the night. That wasn't a goal. Obviously split the Vegas defense to go in tight on Marc-Andre Fleury, who made the save, with his glove from behind his back. So, he still looked very much like a dynamic presence who, if he got some open ice, could make something happen. I think his line with Ryan Hartman and Matt Zuccarello was the steadiest that the Wild had. I think they generated the most. And that bodes well considering, like you said, they didn't score and the Wild still won the game. So I think if they keep those chances up, especially with Kaprizov being involved, I could see obviously that line being a big factor in this series.
Do you think Vegas is frustrated at this point? Is it too soon in the series to be frustrated by, you didn't score in game one, you lost your home ice advantage or something you worked hard to get this season? But what was the sense you got from maybe the other side, even though the Wild is the team you cover?
Yeah, I think frustration is probably appropriate. This was a team that until a few nights ago was, kind of careening towards this West Division title, the President's Trophy for the best record in the NHL. And then obviously Colorado swooped in at the last game to take those titles away from Vegas. But I don't think that discredited or changed the fact that this is a team that has lofty expectations, that expects to, potentially, contend for the Stanley Cup as soon as this season and, maybe meet Colorado in the next round and really have a head-to-head, matchup for this, West Division. So, I think this was, in some sense, a little bit of a setback for them. Not only just, losing the first game of the series, but, this was a team that, is supposed to be this high-scoring, fast, tough-to-handle team. And the Wild, like it has throughout the season, found ways to contain it and, keep Vegas obviously off the scoreboard. Having said that, this is a team too that's not at full strength. Obviously, Max Pacioretty didn't play in game one. He's been out with an upper body injury. He's a top line player for this team. So obviously, if he gets back in, that adds a new dimension for that offense and maybe, changes up the lines a little bit to give Vegas the definition and balance it probably wants. And, in a scoreless third period, in game one, the Golden Knights are switching their lines. They're trying to find obviously something it looks like to click, and they just didn't get that. So, yeah, I think frustration and now probably, being cautious to not fall behind 2-0 and go into Minnesota. Obviously where the Wild has played Vegas well, just like it's played them well here in Las Vegas. So game 2 is going to be pretty critical for the Golden Knights to kind of, I think, establish the direction of the series, but where that team is at too.
Like you mentioned, game 3 back in Minnesota on Thursday, not getting ahead of ourselves, but yeah, if they can take game 2 and, what you saw in game 1 doesn't make you think it will be easy, but also doesn't make you think that that's a a impossible hill to climb. Like, this is a team that they are now, 6-3 against this season. And I know, a lot of those games were close. The one of them was overtime or shootout in the regular season. 4 of the 5 regulation wins now, or actually this was overtime, but 4 of the 5, that didn't go overtime in the regular season, or this one, was 1 goal. These are close games they're playing with them, but they're finding ways to win these games. Sometimes you just have a team that you match up well with. And I think we even talked about this a week or two ago as we were kind of cycling through who they might play, whether it's going to be Vegas or Colorado. This just seems like a team that, if maybe I can leave you with the final thought and you can expand on this, just for whatever reason, this is a team that the Wild seems to have good matchups with and a certain amount of confidence against. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it's been this way ever since Vegas got in the league, which, maybe is to an extent a little bit surprising because obviously the Wild's personnel has changed, in those years over that time. It's a new goalie, new forwards, a little bit different looking defense, but yet it just for some reason finds a way to have success against Vegas, in Vegas as well. This is a tough building to play in. Even now when it's not at full capacity, there was, over 8,000 fans in the building on Sunday, and it's loud, it's intense. This is, I think, is an arena that's getting one of those reputations in the NHL that, like, it is tough to go in there and in the regular season pry 2 points away. And obviously in the playoffs to win as well. So, the Wild just doesn't seem fazed by that at all. I think for this season in particular, it sounds so cliche with, the way that the Wild, is just kind of businesslike and, banks one win and moves on to the next and just kind of flushes it and moves on. But I got that same vibe after game 1 from them. Like, the stakes are different. It's playoff time. It's Vegas, which is obviously a team that did terrific in the regular season. Second, narrowly missing like the division title, but it just doesn't seem to matter. I think the Wild knows who it is, how it has to play. And, the fact that it got rewarded for that in game 1, I think probably only continues to validate and give the team confidence that, it can hang with Vegas. And, I think especially getting that result on the road, should probably only set the team up to have even more belief and optimism the rest of this series. So it's 2 teams that, it's not exactly that they play identical, but I think what's key to their success, is similar. It's that, straight north to south type of hockey, get the puck in, go to work. Obviously 2 teams built around, solid, tremendous goaltending. We saw that with the clinic. That was game 1. So, I think it's just a matchup that, too, it's entertaining hockey. It's competitive. And I think players kind of feed off of that too. So I think we're seeing that. And I'd expect it to only continue the rest of this series.
Looking forward to game 2 for sure. Tuesday night. Sarah McLellan, thank you for joining Daily Delivery today. And I imagine I'll be bugging you multiple times, depending on how long this journey lasts, but I appreciate it. Take care. All right.
You too.
Let's end with the cooler. Bummer for the Gophers and Ben Johnson. Parker Fox, one of their incoming recruits, transfer from Northern State, tore his ACL. Out for 6 to 9 months, where that leaves him for the season, kind of is in question, I guess, at this point. 6 to 9 months is a timetable that's accelerated, it sounds like to me, for an ACL tear and meniscus problem, but could potentially, if he's healthy, get back for, conference play next season. But Ben Johnson's going to be shorthanded next year regardless, and that's not something that he needed to hear. That's it for today. Chris Hine joins me on Tuesday's show. We're going to break down Wolves' end-of-year stuff. Their season ended Sunday. They had a whole bunch of media availabilities right after that, so we're going to talk through what is left to be done for this team, which is significantly quite a bit for a team that did finish 23-49. Also, we'll have plenty to talk about from Game 2 of Wild versus Vegas tonight on tomorrow's show as well. Thanks for listening to Daily Delivery, and we'll see you again tomorrow.